Hello, people of the free world. Diversity is currently a hot button issue at the moment, and so is gender and race swapping to the point where they're even more so controversial. So, we're going to talk about it. Yeah, I know. Controversial, yada, yada, yada. Now, while I agree with the idea that it's often done as just an attempt for companies to increase their diversity without putting in any effort or time to develop characters, I honestly think it's a underutilized writing technique and believe it could be done better. Now, before we get started, I won't be talking about people of different races taking up someone's superhero identity because to me, this doesn't really count as race swapping because Peter Parker isn't black, Miles Morales just becomes Spider Man, and so on. My favorite example for race swapping, personally, is A Train from TheBoys. Now, in all honesty, it's not that hard to be better than a comic book version of the boys, and I think mainly as I think it mainly attempts to grab attention through shock, sex, and gore. While the series does that as well, there's a lot more depth there. The series itself is a critique of both superheroes and celebrity culture, so A Train serves as a unique look at black celebrities in America. It's really interesting to watch. You see, in America, often black celebrities gain status, money, and power, then proceed to forget where they come from and what happens to people like them when they don't have these things. It's really on full display when we see his interactions with Blue Hawk. He tries his best to combat Blue Hawk in a peaceful and respectful manner, but his separation from set issues make him underestimate the severity of what exactly Blue Hawk is doing. This leads to Blue Hawk paralyzing his brother, and he finally understands how things like this hurt people. Being rich will often separate us from people, whether it be our communities or the world at large, and man, do they showcase that with A Train. He tries to make being black a bigger part of who he is, and it's actually extremely sad. I mean, he wants to make a game about the slave trade, which is one of the most crazy, insane, and asinine things I've ever seen or heard in my life. He even redesigns his students something with South African flag colors. Now, if you know anything about the comics, you're probably asking, thinking, or saying to yourself, well, the Deep was black in the comics, so why couldn't it be kept the same as in the show? I think that's a fair question. I believe they changed the Deep to a white guy because he's supposed to imitate this example of a loser who gains power and abuses it for sexual favors. And this image is often associated with white men because they populate Hollywood the most. He's even the shortest male The Seven member at 5'10", which isn't short, but it kind of pushes the idea of him being this powerless guy given power. Or maybe I'm just over exaggerating, overreaching a bit. I think the Deep's race change is pretty useless, but A Trains has some interesting implications. A lot of the time, how black people get out of poverty, or at least the ways you'll see most promoted, is either through sports or rap music or any other form of entertainment. Now, swimming is a sport, but black athletes are usually in track, basketball, or football. A Train, unlike his fellow members of the Seven, comes from poverty, or at the very least is a pretty obvious part of his backstory, and that really mirrors a lot of black celebrities. By using race swapping, the boys was able to make a really bland and forgettable character from the comics pretty interesting, but to be fair, it's really not that hard to do that with any of the boys' characters in the comics. I mean, Butch is probably the best, and he's still not that good. And before we go to the next part, I have to say the sound design on A Chain's powers is so freaking cool. Now, this makes me really sad to say, but while watching the Cape Crusader, which is pretty solid, I have to say, I have to give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10, not because it's really bad, but I feel like the writers need to get their footing. But throughout all the episodes, I was pretty happy and satisfied with the villains. They were all really cool, really interesting. Even the trains to Harley Quinn, I thought was pretty great. Well, or at least a nice spin or take on the character. But I have to say, the female penguin was really a disappointment to me. In my opinion, I think that being ugly is a really big part of the penguin's character. And it's not just a visual part of his character, but it really pushes forward a lot of his problems. Is meant to be this ugly and grotesque person, and he's outcasted by society and even people who are on the same economic level as him, no matter how hard he tries to get rich and be on the same level as them. It really annoys me that this wasn't really a big part of the female version of the penguin. Now, to be fair, I think she's a solid one-off villain. She's really brutal and she's really brutal. She doesn't care about anyone but herself, and it makes for nice things on screen. But I can't imagine it going much farther than that, especially compared to her contemporaries. Even in the show itself, the Harley Quinn changes were far more interesting, and I believe could have far more longevity. They have far more longevity, in my opinion, and it's just really disappointing to see. Now, I'm not sure how much brutality could really take a villain, especially in the Gotham or Batman universe, because yeah, I think after a while, most of the villains really get to this level. I feel like she doesn't have any interesting characteristics, and yeah, she performed Filicide, and that's really dark and it's really messed up. But when I was watching the show, yeah, that was shocking. It was whoa. But after that, what else can she really do that's really gonna make her pop out from the rest of her contemporaries? Now, it would make sense that you would believe that making her similar to her male origin counterpart would also make her as boring. But I believe that's not true. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with an ugly female character like the penguin. Now, in our current society, looks matter a lot more for women than males for the most part. And I think that having a character like the penguin become a woman would be really interesting when you take in the fact that although the penguin isn't able to be a part of society in the most normal sense because he's an outcast because of how hideous he is, and even when he attempts to get riches, it doesn't help him much in that area. When you put that on a female or a woman character, there's a lot more interesting stuff you can dive into with that. Now, not only would she not be able to fit into the role of a traditional like hetero or just a traditional woman role in general because of how hideous she is, but it would also makes sense that a lot of her accomplishments wouldn't be respected as much as her male's counterpart would be. Because a lot of people don't like the penguin, but a lot of people, even in universe, will admit, yeah, he's got money. He's got all these beautiful women around him just because of his money. But when you take away the idea in Western society, because a lot of people are under the belief, especially red pill people, that women's accomplishments don't really matter, even their intelligence or what they do aside from just being a wife doesn't matter much. And when you put that into a character like the penguin and you make it so she's this woman who can't fit into society, but she because she's so ugly, and because she's so ugly, she can't even fit into a relationship where she can't comply with normal gender roles. I think there's a lot more you could have done there than just a very brutal villain. I really doubt I've been able to change anyone's mind regarding this topic because let's be honest, corporations are gonna corporation. They're not really gonna try to change anything or push for better writing because they don't really care. They just want diversity points for the most part. But I just wanted to get my feelings out regarding this. And yeah, race and gender swapping characters does seem difficult. I'm not gonna lie. It's a really tight rope that you have to walk. In attempts to cater to new fans, you have to make a character somewhat recognizable, but at the same time, you have to make said character both and unique and interesting enough to cater to old fans, so that you can really justify your race or gender swapping. Now, in my opinion, does it need to happen? No. Both Marvel and DC have characters that are already black, gay, and women that could really make a big splash on television or movies as it is. Or they could make totally new characters. Now, I know totally new characters would be difficult because it's a lot of stuff you have to pour into them, but a lot of the old characters, you don't have to rewrite a lot. Maybe you can modernize it just a bit, but a lot of these old characters have really deep and magnificent writing. I mean, DC itself has Icon, Rocket, Static Shock, Blood Syndicate. Blood Syndicate is amazing. But yeah, and Marvel has stuff like Blue Marvel. People of the free world, I hope you like this video. Hope you like, subscribe, or whatever. And if you have anyone else you want me to talk about, just leave it in the comments below.